Hello there, and welcome to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. The dead period is here. Coaches are officially get a much-needed breather after what's been just a wild 6 months for them as they work on recruiting. And before we get into the latest in recruiting, Husker Online Show brought to you again here this week by our proud title sponsor, Zipline Zipline Brewing Company, and particularly their new beer that's been released this summer. It's going to be a permanent fixture for Zipline, ZipLite. And guys, I went into Hy-Vee. I did my homework for our listeners this past week, and they did have ZipLite.
They did
at Hy-Vee.
Which Hy-Vee?
I was at 40th and Old Cheney, so a little too far south for you, Steve Sipple.
Yeah.
I know you don't like to typically cross the O Street.
Oh, I don't mind. I just get dirty looks.
They're like, what's he
Sipple,
doing in
what
here?
are you doing?
Let alone trying to buy ZipLite.
Now they're coming down south.
But yeah, we got ZipLite. Robin got his supply of Zipline here, and we're hooked up for the summer.
Yeah, the ZipLite, I tried it and had a 6-pack. I'm already down to 1 can.
Oh, I thought you meant you had a 6-pack.
Yeah, well, yeah, I could have easily. That's the thing. Like
It helps you keep your 6-pack.
The best part about it is you could have 6 in a setting. The worst part about it is you could have 6 in a setting. Like that's kind of what it is. It's smooth drinking.
I had one last night after the swim meet. I got back 100-degree outdoor swim meet at Genesis Pool.
Pounded one.
ZipLite when I got home. Watched the end of the Tennessee game. But okay, let's get into recruiting because it is a big week with visits now done for Nebraska. Now it's kind of, what are the next pieces to move? We're still waiting on Sierra Wright, the transfer corner from USC. But all signs point to him being a Husker. I mean, I'm fairly confident that that's going to happen. So my question is, when you if they get Sierra Wright here, the USC corner, who was a former top 100 national recruit, he started 11 games, he played 23 games at USC. Is he good enough to win this corner job, or is he the favorite at this point to win the corner job when you start to put him up against Malcolm Hartzog, Jeremiah Charles, Dwight Boodle, and some of these other corners that are going to be in there with Bly Hill out of the picture?
I would say the best question is would he be the favorite? I don't think he just waltzes the campus and gets the job. It's the fact that he has 11 starts at USC. He started 11 times in 2022 you can't ignore that, because if it's, for instance, if you would say Jeremiah Charles is your number one right now, which you probably could, by the way.
Or Hartzog.
Yeah, Hartzog. Yeah, Hartzog, I think they would like better at safety. Now, I was getting to Charles. Charles has never started a game in college. He's a redshirt freshman. So, yeah, I mean, you definitely lean towards Sierra Wright, assuming he's in shape and ready to go. Hartzog, again, I think they prefer him at safety. He didn't have a great year at corner. So I would say Wright is the favorite.
Yeah, I don't know if you bring in a player of this caliber with that experience, if you feel overly confident about that room, like right now. I mean, late in the process, bringing in a guy like that,
Good point.
I mean, it seems like they view that as an area of need, and they wouldn't go through all this if they didn't need, they feel like they needed to address it in a big way. So I'd probably say the favorite's accurate.
I'll throw out this hypothetical. When Colorado comes into Lincoln week 2, would you feel comfortable with Jeremiah Charles or Malcolm Hartzog routinely matched up against Travis Hunter?
Well, I get
a
where you're
first-round
going.
pick.
Yeah, I know
the
where
best
you're going.
player in the Big 12.
It's a loaded question.
Because that Tommy Hill, by choice, will probably be on him a lot.
Right.
But there's going to be moments, and Colorado brought in a transfer receiver that had over 1,000 yards as well.
Right. I mean, all I could say, Sean, is, I know where you're going with it, and I get it. It's just possible that Jeremiah Charles could be a star that we just don't know about. That I don't want to. What I wouldn't want to do is just dismiss Jeremiah Charles as being very capable in that scenario.
He only played 1 year of high school football too, so like his upside is through the roof. As he continues to grow and develop, his high school football career was limited. He was more of a track athlete, a basketball player that then Bob Wager got to go out for football.
Yeah, and then the other part of that, I got you. The other part of that with Hartzog, as I mentioned, he didn't have a great year. He didn't have the year last year that he did out of the gate as a freshman. But you have to leave open always, and we don't do this very well as media, I don't think. We don't, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we do a good job of leaving open the possibility that Hartzog will be much better. leaving open the possibility of development.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we tend, I think, as a media corps to dismiss players if they have a bad year and say, oh, that'll never get any better. Write them off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes they get better. And I wish I could come up with an example off the top of my head. There's tons of them.
Well, Tommy Hill. We would have wrote him off.
Great.
He wasn't even in the conversation. Now he's their best corner.
Great one. They moved him. Remember, we were at Rutgers. We were at glorious New Brunswick, New Jersey. We looked down on the field and he was practicing with the receivers. He was warming up with the receivers. Now look at him. Now he's their guy. We're like, oh yeah, well they got Tommy Hill on one
potential
side.
All Big
He
Ten
led
guy.
the Big Ten in pass breakups in conference games.
Right. So that's a great example.
So just for clarity, you talked about the USC. So Shedeur Sanders threw for 371 yards and 4 touchdowns against USC secondary last year. So in that conversation, I don't know
if he played in that game.
it's that
I don't know if he might have left the team by that point. He left the USC team in October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all right. Couple other notes I want to hit on as far as recruiting goes. Brian Tapu who's an offensive lineman out of Utah, originally an overseas player though, Polynesian. Looked like he was a slam dunk to be a Husker. He visited the week before. In fact, we essentially had commitment quotes from him ready to roll. Then he visits Oregon State and commits to the Beavers this weekend. So that's a blow. And I know there's been kind of some theories and reports out there that Nebraska maybe was trying to hold them off. That's not true at all. Like I can tell you with 100% certainty, Nebraska very much wanted Brian Tapu. They are in a position where they don't have tackle bodies on their roster. They flew his family in from New Zealand for the visit.
Yeah, they don't have a tackle in the class. Right?
No, so
they don't have an offensive lineman in the class yet. So why would they hold him off?
Yeah, kind of a blow to lose him, and he plays for Tony Finoti. So I mean, there's a connection there. There are a lot of things there that like, wow, this is going to work out. But Oregon State does have a big Polynesian. They've always had a big Polynesian presence on the roster, and he picked the Beavers here this weekend. Now,
you know what they don't have though? They don't have a conference.
Yeah.
Really, they don't. That's odd to me.
Yeah, by 2025, it's going to be a real struggle for them to keep up with all the finances that their previous Pac-12 brethren had before.
Right. So it's an odd pick to me in that regard.
But he's a foreigner. So I think he, and foreigners in general have a different view of the recruiting. And Robin deals with this a lot in basketball. I mean, like sometimes they don't even know. And David Hoofkin's a great example that he visited Nebraska this weekend, knew nothing about American college football teams for the most part.
Yeah.
So when he gets a North Texas offer or even a Houston offer, it's hard to measure that against Nebraska. It took people like Chris Adamson from Gridiron Imports to explain, like, David, Nebraska's got great tradition. They're a great program. David Hoofkin came on his visit and by the way, looked incredible in the pictures that he posted just in his full uniform. I mean, we've not seen him in full. Check out these pictures in full uniform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see.
He looks like
Rob, what do you
so
got?
to that point about the foreign aspect, Sean's 100% right. Like a lot of times with guys like that, the ultimate factor is who do they trust? Is there a coach or is there someone within the university that the family trusts enough to send their kid halfway across the world to basically take care of them? And, with Keisei Tominaga, like the Nebraska had a connection there with his family. And so they didn't court any other schools. They went to Nebraska because they knew that they could trust the people there to take care of Keisei. And I'm sure this is the exact same or maybe a very similar situation to where Oregon State had people within their program that the family trusted enough to maybe outweigh all the other perks that Nebraska might have over Oregon State.
And Hoofkin came on his official visit by himself. He's a grown man. Like he's
22.
Yeah, so it's not like he's a kid.
Look at that kid. He looks like he's ready to lead the country. Wow.
Got my vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's put together, and he'll be a defensive lineman. So 2 different international recruiting stories there. With Tapu's family coming from New Zealand and that not working out. But yeah, look at the arms on Hoofkin.
Yeah, interesting. I really find that discussion interesting, offense or defense. I was really, really intrigued by him as an offensive tackle, as a left tackle, as a very athletic 6'7" left tackle. But I'm also, Sean, I saw him in pass rushing drills in Houston. And Sean, I was like, okay, we knew that they were talking to him as an offensive tackle. Then when I saw him as a pass rusher, I was like, he can rush the passer. He's got bend. He's got explosion.
Also, keep in mind, though, he's a 22-year-old going against probably like 16-year-olds.
That's true. He was. He was a grown man.
So
but he looked good. He looked good rounding that corner as a pass rusher.
I agree. No, you're right. I always thought the need was at tackle. Now, the great thing is he can play in a game or two this year if they gave him that opportunity, which if they did that, that'd be huge. But you got to think he's obviously bound for a red shirt.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some of that is dependent on what if he comes in August in camp and you're like, wait a second, he's our third best pass rusher. I mean, then I don't know that he possibly, I know what I saw and I know what I see here. And he's 22 years old. You can't just dismiss the possibility that he could play right away.
Or would he be more of one of those D linemen that takes on two and kind of holds people? Because he's big, you know, like I don't look at him as a true beat a Big Ten tackle off the edge. There's very few.
What about future?
Maybe.
See, I do as in the future, perhaps.
Just wonder how much the age factor plays into the redshirt conversation. I mean, redshirting at 22 years old. I mean, I'm sure it'd probably be in his best interest, but what are his thoughts on that? I mean, he's waited a long time to get to this point.
He doesn't need physical development like a lot of
clearly not.
No, he doesn't need physical development like a lot of incoming freshmen. He's raw. Wouldn't you say, Sean? You watched him. He's pretty raw.
When I remember when Nuri Newelly first came over, you know, he started working out with Chris Slatt. And doing workouts, and foreigners, especially in that culture, they weren't used. They don't push their body to the extreme and then come back the next day and do it. So the hardest transition for Nuri when he came to America was learning how to like come back the next day,
right? That makes sense.
And working through like the pains your body goes through as you're trying to develop it. So I'll be curious how that adjustment goes because it's just not in the day-to-day workout culture there like we see here with our football players.
Great point. I mean, recovery is sort of what you're talking about, right? And that's where, what a marriage. I mean, what a marriage. Because what is Matt Rule? What is one of the staples of Matt Rule since he's been here? This is not something I just recently noticed. I noticed it right away almost, how much he emphasizes recovery, the importance of athlete recovery. It struck me because I hadn't heard a coach talk about it as much as Rule. So it goes right along with this. I mean, he's at a place where Nebraska is a grade A institution in terms of that, which could really help him.
Yeah, and a lot of that's got to be self-motivated too. Like, there's certain guys that are wired to take care of their bodies at that level and get enough sleep and eat the right things and do the right recovery, the ice baths and all those things. Go to the training room. You know, like those are things that you got to kind of learn how to do. And a player coming from overseas probably just doesn't have a lot of experience.
And they have a giant
to this level
cold tub pool now that simulates an ice bath. And they can get it down to 46 degrees.
That would be comfortable. Discipline. Some of this is discipline.
Absolutely. It is.
I mean, taking care of your body in a recovery sense that's
sitting in a cold tub is not fun.
Right. That's a form of discipline. Just having the presence of mind to do it and then doing it. Because you know how it is with everybody these days. You have a million things you can do and think about, but you got to slow down and recover.
All right, when we come back, I want to hit more into recruiting and just hit on some of the key names that we're waiting on next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show, brought to you by Zipline Brewing. Make sure you get out, try the new ZipLite beer. It is on the permanent rotation now. It's hit stores, under 100 calories. Perfect beer for the summer. Perfect beer to go just find Steve Sipple somewhere and enjoy a ZipLite.
Yeah, somewhere. I wonder that beer would be good into September. October.
Oh yeah, it's going to be on the post game show is my plan.
Oh, okay.
The problem is there's so many other good ones there. Like you want to try their other ones.
Good idea. That Colorado game could be hot. You know, it'll be hot.
It'll be hot into October. We'll be ZipLighting it for months.
Okay.
All right, let's get Husker Online Show also brought to you by Ellerbrock-Norris. They've been helping Nebraska business owners protect their purpose for over 120 years with risk management solutions built for local businesses. Ellerbrock-Norris partners with you on commercial insurance, group benefits, business exit planning, safety, and more. Start thinking long-term with your business and create a risk management strategy to protect it. Are your employee benefit costs going through the roof? Talk to Ellerbrock. Workplace injuries skyrocketing your workers' compensation costs? Talk to Ellerbrock. Hoping to retire in the next 10 years and sell the business to family, key employees, or even a friendly competitor? Talk to Ellerbrock. Ellerbrock-Norris is helping you protect your purpose, whether it's your business and the employees in it, or your life outside of work, or your future retirement goals. Head to Ellerbrock-Norris.com/HuskerOnline today to get your free risk evaluation. Thank you again to Ellerbrock-Norris for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. Okay, I wanted to get in on some commit targets, but I did want to share this number that I wrote on Monday. Nebraska right now is in a position to have 46 newcomer additions to their roster. 46.
Okay, how many and how
or
many?
46 freshmen, true freshmen.
Right, that's what you're going for. Then you add 11 transfers.
11 transfers in there, and then then you have 34 redshirt freshmen. So you currently have on this team 80 players that carry freshman and redshirt freshman tags.
Okay, and then what really piqued your interest and got your attention? So 80 newcomers and redshirts, right? That's what we're talking about for Nebraska. Colorado
Freshman newcomers.
Yeah, Colorado's roster, 77 total players, which strikes me as coaching malpractice. Because you've essentially punished yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've self-imposed penalties. Usually the NCAA would come in and say, hey, we're going to dock you 8 scholarships. Colorado just did it on their own. Odd approach. I mean, they beat Nebraska last year. So Colorado fan, you got that. You won 36-14. I was there. I saw it. I get it. But 77 players on your roster. That's what you're going with.
Mm-hmm. And just listening to Matt Rule last week when he was talking about just the roster sizes and what the future holds with that, he said a lot of people make the argument, well, in the NFL, you only have 53 players. Well, that's not true. You have an entire practice squad, and the number of guys that come in and out of your pool of available players
gets to be 90.
Yeah, it's like pushing 100 in some cases.
Yeah.
So like the idea that you're operating under this pro model is just doesn't work that way,
No,
unless you start doing your own practice squads and your own reserve teams for colleges that can call players up when necessary, because that's the only way it works in the NFL.
Rule did a good job of dispelling that conversation, which I got to say, I would say that sometimes. Well, the NFL has only 50, they operate with 53, and it's just fine. I was wrong.
No.
And Rule, and I'm sure Rule heard me maybe or other people, whoever, say that and go, come on. You're actually talking about 80 to 90 guys that would cycle through a typical NFL.
Well, and the thought of illuminating walk-ons, Lane Kiffin and Kirby Smart have come out firing on this topic. To the point where they said that they would give money out of their own salary if it meant keeping walk-ons.
Is that right? Is
Good.
that right?
And I think if you're Matt Rule, it's smart to continue this aggressive approach, because I just have the thinking that if they did have a roster cap, there's going to have to be a grandfathering on there. You can't just say, okay, tomorrow you need to take out 30 players, get the moving truck, move them out. How bad of a look would that be if they did that to college? They can't do that. So I think Matt Rule right now, stuffing in as full as he can, is smart, because I do think those players that are currently here will have some I would hope they have some protection for their education.
Yeah, I totally agree. I hope you're right. When you say grandfather, you mean they would get a year?
Well, they would basically let anybody, they'd let you have time to get to the new number.
Okay.
And like current players.
Stagger it maybe?
Could
you stagger it? Could you stagger the number and say, okay, we're starting at 115, but we're headed toward 90?
Or you have 4 years to be at 120.
Okay.
I mean, you have to have
Something
time,
like
but like Nebraska's going to basically be at 150 now. I mean, they're pushing 150.
That's a lot of guys.
It is. That's high end in the Big Ten, although Rule also pointed out in his last media appearance that Nebraska's not the only school with big numbers. There's others in the 130 range.
Yeah, 125 to 135 is more than norm. And we're talking about Nebraska having essentially 10 to 15 more players in that. And that's kind of ingrained in the fabric of this program.
It sure is. It is ingrained. That's why it's a bigger topic here than most places.
I do want to hit on just some recruiting targets we're kind of keeping tabs on here too for Nebraska, because obviously there's some big ones.
There need to be some big ones physically.
Chase Lofton, the tight end, we don't really know kind of where he's going with his decision.
Tight end, Millard South.
Bryson Weber, the corner out of Missouri City, Texas, 6'3" corner.
6'3" corner, Rob. How's that sound to you?
Fits the mold.
He was here this weekend, and RPMs for Nebraska right now. I like their chances with him.
I read that in your column.
Will Hawthorne out of Gilbert, Iowa, which is essentially Ames, right off, basically it's like a Waverly of Ames, if you're trying to use a Lincoln analogy. So, the Cyclones are very much, in a good position, but Matt Rule really wants Will Hawthorne.
Will Hawthorne, 6'2", 220, can play either middle or outside.
And he runs a 10.9.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. 10.9 at 220. Yeah, that's Division I stuff.
How hard is that going to be to pull a kid from basically Ames away from Iowa State?
Hard.
The selling point, though, is the Big Ten. Like, he feels like Will Hawthorne told me this, that he feels like he's a better fit in the Big Ten, like his style play.
Is that right?
In the Big 12, it's not as much of a true linebacker in the box league.
More open, probably a little more open. Not as open as it was when we covered it, in the Mike Leach days. Rest in peace.
It's still pretty open.
But when we covered it, when Nebraska was in it, it was a spread offense league in a lot of ways.
And then Jeremiah Jones out of Murray, Kentucky, 6'5", 217 athlete. They kind of like him in that Braylon Prude or, a defensive back end role.
Yeah. And he's what, Sean, was he go 6'4", 220 in that range?
6'5", 217.
Hello.
So those are the ones we're watching. Malcolm Simpson committed last week. Christian Jones visited Oklahoma. We're still waiting kind of on word from that. I mentioned Brian Tepu made his commitment to Oregon State. So there's a number of pieces to watch, but that's the top of my list right now.
Sean, do you have concerns about this class not having an offensive lineman yet?
Yes and no, because they could easily get there's two in-state guys that they could have taken, and are offered, and they didn't do it. I mean, Ren Brown out of Stanton just got offered by Kansas State. He's got Oregon State and Texas Tech.
We'll readdress this in the mailbag.
Did we just take Abby's whole mailbag out of her hands?
After she explicitly said, please save this for the mailbag.
I had a senior moment.
Thanks, Zip.
Abby, sorry. Okay. When we come back, we are going to talk more about toughest stadiums in college football, and you might be surprised. Nebraska does not make the list. We'll hit on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, Husker Online Show brought to you by Zipline Brewing. Remember, get some of that new ZipLite beer. I promise you're going to like it. Under 100 calories. Great, refreshing, light beer, and tons of other great beers at Zipline, but particularly that ZipLite beer. Get out there, try it. It's their newest beer that just hit shelves. Thanks to Zipline, but also want to welcome in our newest sponsor, guys. We're also brought to you by Babble. What foreign language did you guys take in college?
German.
I didn't take it in college. I got mine done in high school.
Yeah, me too, by the way.
French was mine.
French, German.
So I took Portuguese.
Wow.
Essentially to graduate. I mean, they eliminated the course after I got done, but it was a class that a lot of football players in there. I took it with Keo Craver and a number of others.
This was at the University of Nebraska.
Justin Seeley was in my class. I met Justin Seeley, but Babbel, if you're not familiar with the product, it's a great way to get familiar, learn a foreign language. My wife is actually, her mom's from Cuba. She's a Spanish teacher. So very fluent in Spanish. We go down to Miami, and I obviously have no idea what's going on. So I would probably pick up a lot learning some, taking some of the courses online with Babbel.
I would do Spanish in a heartbeat. Like that, I could feel like there'd be real value with that.
So here's the deal. If you are interested in learning a foreign language on your own time, getting caught up in an easy fashion or easy way to do it, Babbel is an outstanding way to learn a new language. And, as you know, Spanish is becoming more and more prevalent to have to know in this country. So it's a great, easy way to pick up a language that you're trying to learn here. And we've got a deal for Husker Online listeners right now. You're going to get 60% off a Babbel subscription only for our listeners. You got to use the promo code, though. It's babbel.com/Husker. So we're going to give you 60% off at babbel.com/Husker. That's BABBEL.com/Husker. Husker. So make sure you put that /Husker in there, and we're going to give you 60% off a subscription to Babbel. Great way to learn a new language on your own time, especially if you're doing some traveling. You want to go to Europe, you want to go to a different country for the summer. This would be a great way just to say, you know what, I can at least order food, get out of the country. So Babbel.com/Husker. Thanks again to Babbel for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online show. Okay. Stadium rankings, guys. This was a interesting deal, and these lists have become blows to Nebraska fans as the program has struggled since 2016. No bowl game since 2016. They came out with a EA Sports toughest college football stadiums to play. Memorial Stadium in Nebraska did not make the top 25.
Well, Nebraska's, I got them in the college football playoff era at 34-31 on the home field. Now think about that record. You can't put them
barely above water.
Yeah, you can't put Nebraska in a top 25 at 34.
Well, Michigan's 16th. So that kind of puts in perspective how hard this is. Iowa's 20th.
Camp Randall, way overrated, by the way. Wow, 7? You've been there. That place isn't that big of a deal.
At night it is.
Yeah.
I will say, why is Michigan State 22?
Yeah,
that Nebraska is a much tougher place to play than Michigan State. I would put Mississippi State's at 25. The cowbell noise alone makes that hard.
Yeah, and a lot of it goes back to, if you have a good team, your home field is going to be a tough place to play inherently. So that's where you get Alabama, Georgia, and the SEC environments are different in a lot of ways. That's why the majority of the list is SEC teams. But with Nebraska and why they're not in this conversation right now, obviously the lack of team success has a big part of it. But I think another issue for me is just, I don't know what Memorial Stadium wants to be right now. They're trying to do everything. They're trying to, do new age stuff and appeal to recruits and modern fans, while also honoring the past with all these, relics of,
Irish song.
But yeah, that sort of thing. And then then there's the corporate influence where they have to do instead of playing a song to get teams fired up, they have to do the, whatever company guess the song game or something like that, and I think they're just trying to just hodgepodge that atmosphere to where a lot of these teams, they don't need to do things like that because they have an identity of what their home field is, what the game day experience is. And I think Nebraska needs to get back to just narrowing the scope of what a game at Memorial Stadium is all about.
Call me crazy. I don't think it's even necessary for the PA announcer at Memorial. They just started doing this recently to do the third down. That does not need to be done at Nebraska.
I love that, by the way.
I
do.
It's manufactured.
It's kind of cool, though.
You can just say it's third down. You don't need to to the point where Kirk Ferentz stopped the game a couple times because the third down. It was an opera singer singing third down for 25 seconds.
There's an idea. Have an opera singer,
audio.
A real opera singer do that. Hey, hold on, Sean. Is Autzen Stadium on here?
Yes.
Where's it at?
11th or 12th?
11.
That's a no-brainer to me. You guys have been to a lot of these stadiums, so you can speak authoritatively on this. Autzen was really hard, I thought. Not because it's big and there's a ton of people. I think it's about 50,000+, but it just struck me as very difficult. Kinnick Stadium is tough. Fans are right on you. Darrell K. Memorial Stadium, Texas, not tough. Surprised it's on that high. They don't even. They're probably selling out now.
It's over 100,000.
They got it. I know, but it doesn't. It's just kind of blah. These are interesting.
These lists are impossible.
That generate discussion.
Ohio State though at night, that's as hard as you're going to see. Penn State at night.
Those two. God. Sean. Okay, now you said something that makes sense. Ohio State at night and Penn State at night, no doubt, rough duty for a visiting team. That game when they had Jamal Lord quarterback, and it was a whiteout, and Larry Johnson ran wild, and Jamal I think it was his first road game, I think, as the starter. and he was wide-eyed. He was not Jamal. God love you. If there's a fan in this world of Jamal Lord, the number one fan's probably sitting right here, but he wasn't ready for that. I don't know how many.
Well,
people
and
were.
think about, like, there weren't a lot of environments like that in the Big 12. Penn State, and that was one of Penn State's first night games. They didn't have night games.
Oklahoma at night, though, that was tough. Oklahoma at night is rough duty too.
Rarely did that it started to get played at night a little bit towards the end of the series, but it didn't feel like they had a night history.
No, and night adds to about any stadium, just some more than others. And those two, Sean, you identified Penn State and Ohio State, rugged.
I still think Wisconsin, when they're good at night, like,
I don't see it there.
You're pretty quick to dismiss that.
The 2011 Wisconsin-Nebraska game at night was one of the toughest environments I've ever seen.
On the other hand, I mean,
I agree,
we've been there when they don't even, when it's deer hunting season.
Well, how much of that has to do with Nebraska?
A little bit.
And Nebraska hasn't won there in over a decade.
Yeah,
they've never won there.
No, this just doesn't strike me as a tough place to play at all, really.
Hey, Lane Stadium. When Rob, I know you were there too, but Rob and I went out. That place was loud.
Lane.
We went there in
God, yes.
09. Remember, Rob?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Tough place. Lane. Tough place to play. Loud, ornery, on you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and they have the Enter Sandman intro. That's probably like the best intro in all of college football.
Robin and I, like, I don't know why we did this, but we went. Like, we wanted to go see the stadium. I don't know if it was doing Channel 6 TV. We go in and, like, the stadium, there's a walkthrough going on. It was like the gates are open.
Yeah, we walked in with Tyrod Taylor.
And we watched Virginia Tech's.
I need to hear this.
We watched Virginia Tech's special teams walk through, but there were other people in there. It wasn't just us.
Did you get escorted out?
No.
And then Beamer was not happy. Like that, two Nebraska reporters were in there, like, watching their walkthrough.
We talked to him afterwards.
We interviewed him. We interviewed him afterwards. Then we went to Bud. Was it Bud Wilkinson?
No, their defensive coordinator.
Bud Foster.
Bud Foster.
We went to his. He had a bar steakhouse. I use the word steakhouse very loosely.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call it much of it was more of a glorified Chili's. We ate at Bud.
Hokey mob on you here.
The place closed down. It's not even open anymore.
It wasn't very good.
No, but we went to his steakhouse there. But yeah, we got Beamer on us after that game, and I still can't believe Nebraska lost that.
Well,
game.
and that's like they were doing their walkthrough, but a lot of that was like their special teams install, and you know what, Beamer ball with special teams, that's a big deal for them. And here's just two opposing media members watching their entire walkthrough.
Total yahoos.
What's up, Tyrod?
Ross Jernstrom was there with us, though,
with his camera.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Didn't help Nebraska.
So Nebraska lost.
Well, that was the game where they had a coverage bust.
Yeah, safety bust. Right, safety bust.
It was deep thirds, and one of the Matt O'Hanlon jumped up, and then they got over the top of him, touchdown, or they got inside. And I mean, that was the game where you really realized how good Sue was.
Yeah,
I mean, Tyrod Taylor, who's an NFL starting quarterback for many years, looked lost.
Mm-hmm. God, should have won that. Nebraska should have closed that game down. That was uncomfortable in the post game because Carl Pelini had to kind of explain what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Bad memories.
All right. When we come back, Abby Barmore will join the show, and we'll take your questions in the mailbag. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut, Abby Barmore. Husker Online Show brought to you again by Zipline Brewing Company. Get yourself a 6-pack of the new ZipLite beer. It is their newest release, hottest beer of the summer. You're going to find it all around the state of Nebraska, wherever they sell Zipline. That's ZipLite beer, 95 calories, 2.7 carbs. It is the beer of the summer. You want to get your hands on it. Also, guys, we're brought to you by Omaha Steaks. And last night I was sitting out at the Genesis Pool on 7th and A. We had the swim meet. And
Genesis Pool.
I was sitting right next to my good friend Nate Rempe, president, CEO of Omaha Steaks. And he said, Sean, he goes, you guys are selling a lot of steaks for us.
Yes.
And I was like, I like to hear that, Nate. And he's like, we're going to keep doing it. And Nate, by the way, is a Husker. So the head of Omaha Steaks is a Husker.
Husker fan.
Husker, season basketball ticket. Goes to every single basketball game.
Knows Rob.
With his dad, Larry. So Nate said, hey, we're going to keep rolling with Husker Online. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. And they're going to continue to do the 50% off site-wide.
Nice.
But we are going to give you another $30 off that. And there's a promo code for that. So go on omahasteaks.com. You'll find these 50% off deals already. Then we're going to give you $30 off your order of steaks. Thanks, Nate Rempe, for this great special. Promo code HuskerOnline.
Great deal.
50% off,
Right.
$30 off. Promo code HuskerOnline to get that $30 off at checkout. You still got time to get that steak order in for July 4th. Nobody wants to go to a July 4th party with bad hamburgers, bad hot dogs. You want to roll. You don't want to roll in with the off-brand thing of hamburgers.
Yeah,
no,
like
you sure don't.
The 40-pack of hot dogs and just a tube of beef. You don't want that.
We are your July 4th headquarters between Omaha Steaks and Zipline.
What more do you need?
Yeah, really.
So get your order in because we're rolling that special $30 off already with the 50% off at omahasteaks.com, promo code HuskerOnline. Okay, mailbag time, Abby Barmore.
Okay, first one. Which coach on the offensive side of the ball has the most pressure this season?
Wow. Hold on.
You have to probably say Satterfield just because of he's kind of getting a fresh start with new quarterbacks, new receivers, healthy running backs, and now he's no longer coaching the quarterbacks. So what will that picture look like with him with a new quarterback, and how much better can this offense be moving forward?
All eyes on Donovan Raiola, too. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't think Satterfield's under pressure. I don't think he's on a hot seat, nor do I think Donovan Raiola is on a hot seat. But he has a veteran offensive line. We do this thing with the offensive line where we say there's really no excuses, and there's really not. So I'd say Donovan and Satterfield are the choices.
Mm-hmm. And
right?
Satterfield too. Obviously the offense needs to be better, but he's inheriting that tight end room. And who's the guy with the highest potential, maybe on the entire offense? Thomas Fidone. And you get Carter Nelson in that room too. You got some weapons to work with. How are you going to develop and utilize those? So yeah. I would throw that into the conversation with Satterfield. Well, I'll put EJ Barthel in that conversation too. They need more production out of their running game. And obviously guys need to stay healthy, but take some of the pressure off your freshman quarterback and get that running game going, that traditional run game.
I think Satterfield said something really important. I agree with you, Rob. I think Satterfield said something really important in Texas. He told us that offense largely is going to go through the tight end. Mm-hmm. And it wanted to last year. It just didn't have the quarterback to do it. I mean, frankly, they struggled at the quarterback position. So that Fidone's going to get a lot of action. Borkerture, who I leave out of the conversation probably too often, Nate Borkerture, they'll go through him. And you want to see what the big horse can do too. Carter Nelson, get him going.
All right, next question.
On our mailbag post on Twitter, there was a lot of concern for Nebraska's 2025 class. So are you guys thinking there should be some panic there, or is there a way for Nebraska's coaches to kind of adjust their strategy to land those guys from official visits?
I'm not really worried because this roster already has a lot of young players. I mean, there's 80 players that are freshmen and redshirt freshmen on the 2024 Husker roster. 80.
And 11 of them are offensive linemen.
But they need to continue to get they need to get a quality group of around 20 commits, and they're going to be, I have no doubt, they're going to be at like 16 here pretty quick.
11 right now. Okay, 11 right now. Now there's no offensive linemen in here. That raises concerns of some people. I thought getting that big from Galveston, Malcolm Simpson, was important. Mm-hmm. But it would be good to see an offensive lineman jump into this. I was sort of thinking the concerns were largely alleviated when they got Simpson, they got Jamarian Parker, and who else in a kind of short order. I guess it was mainly those guys in short order, and Pierce Newberry too. I thought they had that run, and I thought, okay, now they're cooking. So now they just got to kind of get cooking again to take it to another level.
I mean, and they don't need a huge offensive line class. I mean, if they can get 3 or 4, they'll be fine.
Okay. Yeah, it'd just be good to see one jump in there right now.
And the in-state, we talked about this in the in-state front. There's not like a no-brainer O-lineman. I mean, there's guys that will take a lot of development, and they've had them in camp. So they have a good read on the in-state talent there. They just chose not to make an offer.
See, it would help if there was a glaring in-state lineman that you'd say, oh, he's a no-brainer, but there's not. Like if there was a Tyson Terry on the other side of the ball is what we're talking
there might be one for 26 and Landon Von Segren. Nebraska has not offered him yet, but he's picked up Iowa and a number of other offers this summer.
I feel pretty good. I felt pretty good. I mean, like when you talk about Mackay Nelson jumping in, he's 2024, but newcomer. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of with you. The overall picture of youth is good, so I don't worry about the class as much. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. I mean, because to play as a true freshman in general is hard.
Really hard at some positions.
All right. Next question.
So is there a recruit in this 2025 class that if he commits, similar to Dylan Raiola, there'll be several other guys that jump on board with him?
Dawson Merritt?
Yeah, that's a great question, Abby, because I do think there's not like a no-brainer in that sense. But Dawson Merritt would carry a lot of weight. I do think getting Chase Lofton would be big for the future. Yep. When you start to talk about other Millard South players and other in-state players, Christian Jones too.
Yep.
I mean, I think those two guys locally do carry a lot of weight with other future local prospects. But
Dylan
Raiola is a unique deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lofton is really important to me. I think getting that sort of skill in the system is important. He just looks so good on film and then you pair him. I get it now. I know what you guys are thinking. Okay, simple. They got plenty of tight ends. Yeah, they do, but you can't have too many good players.
Mm-hmm.
And you pair him with a guy like Raiola, and big things can happen.
All right, Abby, it looks like we have time for one more question.
Okay, our last one. It was a record-breaking hot night last night, Monday, at the College World Series final game. So what was the most uncomfortable game conditions you've ever experienced?
Fresno State.
That was brutal.
In Memorial Stadium, it would have to have been probably the 2013 Southern Miss game.
Okay. Wow, Sean.
And
2013 Southern Miss, it was probably 110 on the turf.
And I never had seen like the medical crews that busy at Memorial Stadium.
And they had to come back to win that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wait a second.
No,
2013.
No, they won that game pretty handily.
Okay.
That was a Pelini team.
Okay. God, that's the game you go to. I thought for sure you'd go to Fresno.
Well, Fresno, that's a given. I mean, I think that might be the hottest temperature they've ever kicked off in.
At least it was later.
That's why they play it later there.
But I remember like you shot your stand up that Friday before the game and it was like burning, like literally like singeing my skin standing in the sun. Awful. Miami, when they went down there, remember how hot that sun was and the humidity down there?
Yeah, September humidity in Miami, Florida. I mean, it's hurricane season.
That was awful.
So and that was a 3:30 game.
Mm-hmm. That was in the peak
Eastern.
of it.
Another one I'll throw in there, Wake Forest, 07.
Really? Was that bad?
That was my 1 year I did sideline reporting for the Husker Network, and Aaron Andrews was the sideline reporter. And we walked up and down that whole game together, and it was hotter than hell.
It was hot. As far as cold weather games, the Iowa game at Iowa when Burkhead was the running back.
We had like 30 some carries.
Yeah, and it was startlingly cold.
The wind.
Yeah, and I thought all I had to do was walk from the press box to the locker room, but it involved walking across the field. And I wondered at one point if I was going to make it. And then I thought these guys just played out here for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
These are the toughest human beings
Toughen up.
that you can imagine. Because I couldn't believe how cold that was.
06 Big 12 title game.
Yeah, that one's up there for sure.
Oh God!
I wore my gloves in the press box.
Arrowhead. Yeah.
And that was at that time the largest crowd in Arrowhead Stadium history. That game was.
That was hot. I mean, it was so cold. It was a hot environment though, in terms of like intensity.
Over 60,000 Nebraska fans were in that stadium.
Yeah,
and Oklahoma probably had 25,000.
I bet you could find somebody who lost their fingers to frostbite in that game. I bet you could.
The Holiday Bowl, remember? The only reason it was like in the 30s, but it was an open air press box.
And it snowed.
Yeah,
Or
it was
freezing
the Washington Holiday
I was
Bowl.
freezing cold, right? Open air press box, and it was cold.
Yes, I was wearing my coat.
You couldn't even really work at your seat after the game.
And it was like spit and rain. So I had like the roster card, like over my laptop as a little shield.
I had a towel on mine.
Yeah.
Was it Qualcomm?
Yes.
Yes. It was
That
absolutely.
stadium was a dump.
Yes. That's why it's no longer being used.
It's where the Chargers played, right?
Yes.
And it's where did the Padres play there?
No.
They did not.
No.
But anyway, yeah, those are interesting memories.
cold games. Yeah, they're
hot and cold.
We've been fortunate, like in that opening year of Scott Frost, it was record colds where those were two of the coldest home games in history. The Illinois game and the Michigan State game.
Oh God, yes.
Those were two of the coldest on record home games ever at Memorial Stadium.
Yep.
I remember that.
I was in the student section for the Michigan State game. I had like 3 pairs of pants on. It was
Still
terrible.
cold.
It's like one of those ones where you just get a runza just so that you could hold it for as long as you possibly could and then eat it when it was cold.
It's a good idea.
You gotta bring
Hand
stuff to
warmer.
warm your belly when you're
My
doing
buddy
that.
Chris,
Warm your belly.
If you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
my buddy Chris was at Arrowhead for the Chiefs Dolphins game this year, the one that was like miserably cold. And he said if you got a beer from the concession stand,
Freeze.
it froze by the time you got back to your seat.
Yeah, in that game, I'm not joking around here. There were reports of a lot of people who lost fingers to frostbite in that game. Lost smaller appendages, I suppose.
Hey, we love football in this country, baby. We're gonna lose a finger to go to a playoff game.
Hey, I'd give up a pinky for a playoff win right now. No question.
Would you give up a pinky?
If you're a Giants fan.
A pinky for a Giants playoff?
Maybe another Super Bowl.
I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
What? You wouldn't lose a finger for your team's title?
Which pinky would you pick, left or right?
Left.
Yeah. Fascinating.
I would not do that.
Well, there's commitment, and then there's
Good
the
luck
rest
typing.
of you. Who uses your pinky?
AI. You just use AI.
Yeah,
to
that's
do your
right.
articles now, but all right. When we come back, we'll close the show with some Husker basketball headlines. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washed as talking Nebraska basketball. Husker Online Show again brought to you by ZipLite Brewing Company. Proud to be linked up with Zipline as they are a locally owned beer company all across Nebraska. You can find their great beers. Try their new ZipLite beer. It's their hottest, newest release of the summer. 95 calories, 2.7 carbs. You'll find it at your grocery stores, anywhere you can pick up Zipline. That's going to be on the shelves. Thanks, Zipline. And also, Steve Sipple, we're brought to you by who?
Larson Motors. Larson Motors. Let's sell some cars here. If you're looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience. In Nebraska City at Larson Motors. It's one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all of the major brands in one location. We talk about this all the time. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram never has been easier. Start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in lovely Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people,
Real deals.
Hammer it. Come on, real deals. That's what we're looking for.
All right, we're going to talk some Nebraska basketball here with Robin Washett. Robin, obviously recruiting in full swing as Nebraska is doing a lot of 2025 recruiting at this point. What are some of the headlines that have emerged here this week?
Yeah, the big one, I guess we're starting to see now who the kind of priority targets are for the 25 class. A couple of them we already knew. Davis Fogel, he's been on top of the board for a long time, the guard from Washington, now down at the prep school in Arizona. And then Amari Bynum, who is no longer at Bryan. He's down at Link Academy in Branson, Missouri. He's still very much at the top of the board. And then another name, Tommy Anneman, kid from North Dakota, Fargo, who just transferred to Minneapolis. He took an unofficial visit a week or two ago and then just locked in a return trip for an official in September, and Amari Bynum has locked in an official visit for September. Still waiting to see if Davis Fogel, who took an official visit last fall for a football game, if he comes back and does another one before making his decision in the fall. But right now, I'd probably put those three at the top of Nebraska's 2025 wish list. Now, there's also the Abdul Bashir, the JUCO kid from Casper, Wyoming. He was on an unofficial visit. We'll see if he comes back for an official in the fall. He's in the 25 class. That is also a priority target. So you're kind of starting to see the, I guess, biggest needs they want to try to address with the fall signing period in the 25 class. We're looking for another versatile big to eventually take over for Ring Mast. And then you're looking for more shooters, which is what, Bashir and those types of guys are. And then they need another point guard, which is what Davis Fogel would be. And then Amari Bynum, he's a talent that you just take no matter what. So that is kind of where things are right now. Like you said, they just came off a live evaluation period this past weekend. There's one more this coming weekend, and then they're going to go to a dead period in July, with the exception of 3 more live evaluation periods over the course of the month. And then, like I said, once July wraps up, that's when really you start to narrow down the real priority, realistic targets for Nebraska in the 25 class.
Does Fred have a quote unquote lead recruiter?
It depends, because they like Nate Lenzer would be their in-state guy, like their lead in-state guy, but he also does regional. So like he'll
South
go,
Dakota.
Yeah, he'll go to the Dakotas, he'll go to Minnesota and Wisconsin. He was the lead guy in Nick Janowski. So like
That's right.
They kind of have territories where Ernie Ziegler, like he's kind of all over. He's their international guy. He's really connected in Texas. And then Adam Howard is kind of like their portal guy, but also has connections, especially in the Southeast. So they all kind of have their spots, but there's not one guy like when Matt Abdelmassi was here.
Right.
He was the recruiter. Whereas now it's a full staff effort where everybody kind of has their own specialty areas, but it's a staff effort.
And the current team, they're in drills right now.
Yeah. The second Monday in June was their first, or Wednesday in June was their first summer workouts, a small group individual workouts right now. And they're going to go through 4 weeks of that. And then they'll start to do more team oriented stuff where they're doing more schematic work with the actual coaching staff. Then they'll take a bit of a break in August and then come back in September for the start of official practices.
It's got to be a hungry team. It's got to be a hungry team. I mean, they had success last year, but it ended in such a sort of disappointing way.
Mm-hmm.
They got to be hungry.
And so Braxton Mia, so when they started workouts, they had 2 guys that weren't here yet. Braxton Mia, I believe he's here. I think they
7-footer.
Yeah, the 7-footer from Washington. He has to go through that acclimation and to kind of work his way up to workouts, but that's fine. And then Berke Bjunktashul, he'll arrive probably in August, closer to the start of the fall semester, because he's still over training with the Turkish national team, getting ready for the U20 FIBA European Championships.
Good. He's training.
Robin, on the future scheduling for the Big Ten, how do you think they'll do like the California teams and the Northwest teams? Will you play like a Thursday, Sunday, a Wednesday, Saturday? Will they basically make it where you're going to stay out at those places for a period of time and play both teams on the road?
I haven't heard anything concrete, but that's the thought, that it'll be kind of like with football, where like you'll pair your games and maybe have a travel companion, to where like Nebraska and Iowa, just pure example, would go out there at the same time. And then like they both play USC, UCLA, and then just kind of flip flop those games. And then you'd go back out there with somebody else and play Washington, Oregon, or something to that effect. I mean, just to minimize the amount of back and forth travel. And that makes perfect sense.
The Friday package for basketball, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep adding to that or like make that more prevalent. I feel like that's a great window for the Big Ten.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing on TV in the winter on Friday night.
I love the Friday night game. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with you, and I would imagine that they would. So the non-conference schedule is pretty much set at this point. The one thing that we don't know is the remaining field for the Diamond Head Classic in Hawaii. And then once that field is completed, they'll announce a bracket, and we'll get to see who Nebraska's potential 3 games in that. But the 8 other games on their non-cons are set. North Florida was kind of the one unknown. They didn't have a date for it. That's going to be on December 1st. So this non-con's pretty much set. Just need to see who they're going to play in Hawaii and when.
Got an assignment for Rob. I'm sort of irrationally interested in the point guard from Iowa.
Aaron Eulis.
Eulis is a huge component. I mean, I think he could be the starting point guard.
Very well could be.
And I'd like to know his progress, and then you can report back to us next week.
Yeah.
What are you hearing? What are you hearing?
Well, the last time Fred was on Sports Nightly, he glowed about Aaron Eulis.
Did he?
Yeah. I mean, then they have been. Even when he wasn't even playing last year, his work on the scout team, like that caught the coach's attention. Like that was a situation where he could have just checked out, been disgruntled, and woe is me, the world's against me. He didn't. He kind of sucked it up, and he was a valuable member of that scout team, especially with getting guys like Bryce Williams and Jamarcus Lawrence transition into a point guard role, something they really had never played before. So he's very much in the conversation, and starter or not, he's going to be a fixture in that rotation.
Thank you.
All right, lots to keep up with and follow as Robin. No one does it better with Nebraska basketball than the dean of the Husker basketball.
Wait a second, there's only one dean.
That's right. You're the dean, Governor.
Hey, you're the veteran old guy of the beat.
It's weird.
You don't look old, though.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's
His
weird.
veteran status
All the
belies his
young
youth.
writers ask you questions about the history now.
I know.
God, isn't that weird that being that in those shoes?
I'm like the Mike Babcock of Nebraska basketball.
God. Well, you are getting a little gray on the sides, I see.
It's the look he's going for,
It's
probably.
distinguished.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's what my wife tells me.
Yeah, well, then pretty soon it just becomes old, so get ready for that.
I'm teetering right at that breaking point.
Right,
Very
it comes
distinguished.
quick. Yeah.
Well, make sure you stay at Husker Online, and we got a great promo and deal as well. You're going to get 2 months of access to HuskerOnline.com for $1. Use the promo code NU1. That's promo code NU1 to get 2 months for $1 of Husker Online. We'll be back on Thursday for another edition of Husker Online Headlines.